Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We're going to be talking about HR data. High stakes here, managing access in SAP SuccessFactors. We're really excited to have you join us as we dive into this important topic, of course. My name is Angie, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. With the rise of the cloud-based tools, organizations are facing an overwhelming number of SaaS applications, often leading to insufficient security risks and unnecessary costs. Today, we'll explore those strategies that we have to get SaaS sprawl under control, organize your usage, and ensure better governance across the tech stack. We're thrilled to have Matthew Ganter and Daniel Miller with us today, along with, of course, our CEO, Adil Khan. Matthew and Daniel come from Ultimate Strategy Group to join our CEO in this conversation. So before we dive in, just a few quick housekeeping notes, and that will be the session is being recorded, and we'll be sharing this recording with you afterwards. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them into the questions in the control panel, the Q&A session. At the end, we'll try and negotiate those at the end. So with that, let's get started. So I will pass it over to you, gentlemen, to make your introductions.
Great, thanks, Angie. Again, Matthew Gantner from Ultimate Strategy Group. Looking forward to today's conversations all around SAP SuccessFactors and how to better manage and control access. So thank you for having me.
Yes, and I'm excited to be here. Hello, everybody. My name is Dan Miller with Ultimate Strategy Group, and excited to join the team today. Adil?
Yeah, thanks, Matt and Dan. We go back a long ways, as we were talking the other day. I've been working in many of the, areas that the market is interested in terms of overall data and access controls, which is where we specialize as a team. And I'm really excited about joining you guys today because we have recently done some collaboration around SuccessFactors, and it's an area where our customers are seeing a increased demand from their human resource side to improve, the resource performance and so forth. Some of the unique use cases that SuccessFactors supports. So it's getting a lot of attention in the market in general, and so I think this is really timely for us to approach this from a controls perspective. I'm really looking forward to it. So let's dig right in.
I think.
All right. Go ahead.
No, I was saying in terms of the flow today, I think really where we're going to go with for everyone that's joining us is really we're going to take you through an understanding of the risks, talk about some of the key risks as they relate to HR, but also more importantly to SuccessFactors. We're also going to dive into some of the access and role design considerations, as well as talking about some integration with identity management systems that are in the market today. And we're going to wrap up with some best practices and Q&A. So looking forward to jumping in. Slide. So in terms of the role of SuccessFactors, as Adil just shared, really SuccessFactors has been around for a while. We'll cover that more here on the next slide. But really, the role of SuccessFactors is really meant to be a end-to-end HR system, starting with the onboarding and attraction of new talent, and taking them through their employee life cycle from talent acquisition to onboarding, to core HR functions, to benefits, to payroll to compensation, talent management, and more. With that, as with any HR system, there's a lot of PII contained within the platform. So controlling access to that PII is really important to make sure you're protecting your employees, but also the broader company as a whole through the use of a platform like SuccessFactors. Some examples of PII include salary information, social security information, as well as how each individual employee is performing in his or her kind of day-to-day roles. So next slide. So to just touch on the evolution of SuccessFactors, SuccessFactors was one of the first cloud-based SaaS solutions focused in the HR market that was deployed in 2001. In 2012, it was acquired by SAP, and since then, SAP has really kind of taken SuccessFactors to market as a standalone product, but also now in the latest iteration of SAP, really as part of SAP Rise, which is really a combination of SuccessFactors offerings as well as with the S4 HANA or finance package from SAP. And with that, really what's kind of the glue that's bringing that all together is the BTP platform, or SAP's business technology platform, which really allows the unification of access across SuccessFactors and across S4 HANA. So with that, I wanted to hand it over to Dan and Adil to go a little bit deeper into some of the technical components of the overall platform. And so next slide.
Okay, so I'll take this one, Dan, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what we're finding from our perspective as our customers adopt this great new platform is that this is becoming the center of truth, right? This is where source of truth for your human resources in terms of your hiring process, you know, you're changing, like promotions, people changing roles across organizations, leaving organizations. And what we're finding is the risks around over provisioning, because it can do so many things, as Matt just stated. You know, the risk we come across are around over provisioning. So giving administrative access to folks that just need basic self-service, their birthrights, right? Certainly segregation of duties has always been a key risk around HR. So the folks that can change benefits or comp plans, as well as maintain master data on employees. There's various numbers of risk around those key concepts that we work closely with Altum and their clients and our clients to help prevent that. So that's a risk that is, if unmitigated, can lead to not only financial statement issues, but also, you know, findings, but also, you know, just fraud and other waste and other issues around your streamlining of the, you know, the capabilities and getting full value out of this investment you're making in SuccessFactors. You know, insider threats, certainly this is sensitive data. Many of our clients are concerned about, you know, information that is, you know, based, you know, made open to folks based on least privilege principles. So obviously, one of the biggest assets in terms of data organizations today they have is the personal information about their employees, details, not only just email and so forth, but their national IDs, their bank information, if you're using the compensation module, and other characteristics of employees that are sacred and important to build the trust with your employees, right? So insider threats are a key risk. And then, you know, on top of all that, you have this as one of those applications where your auditors and your compliance manager are keenly interested for the reasons that I just mentioned, you know, the financial misstatement risks, your data privacy risks. I won't go through all the checklist of mandates that our customers are facing from whether you're in US, Europe, or anywhere else in the world, right? Each organization is facing a number of those challenges. So I think combined all these things make access governance crucial as you onboard SuccessFactor onto your IT infrastructure and applications. Would you like to add to that, Dan?
Yeah, I think one of the things that you know is bullet number 2 on the slide here, but I think is really worth touching on again, is just the velocity of changes that are happening. And
very cool, yeah.
It used to be that, you know, systems were very were very slow to evolve and had just a standard set of accesses. But in the environment that we have today and the flexibility that's required by I'd say most if not all organizations, really has increased the risk profile too, as we get down and really start to look at over provisioning and the access people need, and sometimes the access needs that are changing, very, very, very frequently and more often than I think we saw at the beginning of the evolution of not only SuccessFactors, but really in all of our SaaS environments. So I think that's just one key to hit on with these items. It's just the velocity and the frequency, the changes, and people moving within the organization. It's not as easy as it used to be.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things, just to add to that, is really one of the things that is unique about HR platforms, specifically SuccessFactors, is the cross-application risk. So Adil, you touched on, and Dan, you did as well, in terms of the separation of duties concerns and what can I do to impact payroll and the finance system and vice versa. So as people also look at how to protect data not only within SuccessFactors, they need to look more broadly across their ecosystem to really make sure that there's an understanding of any cross-application risk that may be present, could be with finance system, as I touched on, or other, as you move forward.
Yeah, great point, Matt. You talked about the integration with BTP, and I think that SAP's BTP, and I think that just it not only increases the risk plane by 2, but quite a bit more than that when you think about all the different ways that folks can get in and impact other areas as well.
Great. I think that's a good segue to the next slide. And right here is a good way to kind of bring it home. Is really, I'll focus on the second bullet point that kind of bring it home for Dan and Adil, which is the decentralized administration, right? So really making sure that people understand that yes, you're going to centrally administer access within one application, but without a true identity provider and that integration with that identity provider for SuccessFactors, finance systems, and other operational systems, that's a challenge, right? And that's a challenge that needs to be addressed either through people, process, and technology. And then that coupled with the level of customization around access and roles that you can have within SuccessFactors also kind of brings home another point that Adil and Dan were making around just really making sure you understand who has access to what within the platform, and that the appropriate separation of duties considerations are in place, or even sensitive access considerations within the SuccessFactors platform.
Yeah, and I'll jump in on that, Matt, too, and just SuccessFactors as it's evolved has become more and more configurable and really built to meet the flexibility needs of the organization. Specifically on the access side, creating custom groups and provisioning is really kind of helped organizations make the system work for them, but in some ways it's made kind of things inconsistent or kind of muddied the waters in terms of role definition. I mean, that's a key issue. Anytime there's flexibility, there's also complexity. Combine that with the way that the organizations are once again always kind of moving around moving around quite a bit. People retain access, and people keep access from their old job for a period of time. And sometimes we see that we see that staying with folks for longer than organizations mean to leave it. I think that the second piece there is with configuration, a lot of the configuration is left to at least on the technical sides for things like logs and ways to review is left to the client. And as projects go and implementations move, sometimes those are the last pieces to get put into place as controls. And so it's those are some of the items that kind of, I hate to say it, but catch organizations, and some key items to watch out for. Matt, I think I heard you chime in there.
No, I was just going to say, I think in addition to that, it's just the business, cost, right? So of not doing the right thing, right? Because ultimately, in the event your environment was inadvertently, something happened, right? Some employee data was let out in different ways, right? That's going to cause a reputational risk to the business and a brand awareness risk. So it's important to take into account not only the technical and process risks that we were talking about here, but also what are the business or potential business impacts if in the event something were to go wrong with your people system. So I just want to kind of add to that in terms of the challenges. And Adil, anything else you want to add on top of that? No, I think you're on mute.
One of the things, Matt, I think that I think SafePaths really does a good job with is, when again, we've hit the integration points a couple of times, but as with SafePaths, what SafePaths does, it provides a cross system view. So within SafePaths' capabilities to integrate with not only SuccessFactors but other systems as well, other solutions as well. So what that helps do is it helps give folks a cross-system view to help folks understand what is available to the user, not only in SuccessFactors, but also in Oracle, if they're using Oracle as an ERP, or SAP. So I think that's one of the big key points of why why the SafePaths suite of applications is really strong. It just gives you that cross-system view.
Yeah, so that would be a good segue into the next slide where we could talk about, we've talked about the challenges, but we can also talk about some of the high stakes, and we've touched on those. So I think Dan and Adil, to where we were talking about before in terms of the technical merits and how to solve for that, maybe this is a good time to talk about how we can address the challenge as well as the high stakes that we're seeing here on the screen with our experience kind of securing SuccessFactors, as well as monitoring separation of duties and sensitive access conflicts.
Yeah, Dan, you want to take a lead on that?
Yeah, sure. So I think as Matt had alluded to, sensitive data exposure, that's costly, and even if organizations do try and put a cost on it, sometimes that cost really, when we talk about the reputational, that's a hard reputational risk. That's a very, very difficult item to really put a hard dollar value on. It's just something that is something that organizations need to watch out for.
Yeah.
As
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I think the key thing to remember is that SuccessFactor contains really some of the most critical data in the enterprise. You're talking salaries, addresses, and in some cases health and leave data, and then the leadership assessments where promotions or eligibility is maintained. So that's something that to remember as we start talking about what is critical to protect. What are your crown jewels? This human capital data is pretty high up there. And another thing to kind of think about after the cost is really the employee trust. Do your employees trust that the organizations can keep their data safe? That's really one of the areas that I think is under, in my opinion, is underappreciated in terms of a breach. What access has gone out there. Adil, Matt, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to put some stats around it that we've been tracking around data breaches, because you hear in the news all the time, what's happening. In a recent IBM study that was just conducted a couple of years ago, showed that an average data breach, that's typically HR data they're talking about in the study, is about 4.45 million. That involves the loss of thousands of records. And then on top of that, if you add all the litigation that goes when these data breaches happen, and not to mention the reputational damage, the cost is very high. So in today's environment, with the different the economies settling down, their trade policies and so forth, customers are asking us about ROI quite a bit, right? What is my return on investment on controls, as an example, which is what I deal with a lot at SafePass. I mean, one of the things that you have to look for is, okay, what type of damage can happen if the risk is materialized of a data breach and SuccessFactors. And so there's some solid evidence that organization can take into account when making investment decisions around these high stakes that you guys just talked about. And then there's on top of that, your auditors are more interested in the data that's in SuccessFactors as part of their scope of audit. They want to know who has access to what, when did they get access, who reviewed it, approved it. So there's a lot of interest among our clients to provide a fine-grained view of activity around provisioning, around certification of access, the roles and privileges that we talked about in the previous slide, to ensure that as third-party auditors, as independent auditors, they can help management sign the financial statement with confidence under the new SEC guidelines, which clearly talks about cyber threats and protections that an organization has put in place before the results are disclosed. And I'm talking about US public companies primarily. Europe with GDPR is a much harder story because you have a lot more penalties that you can read about every day in the newspaper. So it's a significant impact to your business if your employees' data is leaked out to the market or to the dark web. That can create a significant problem. And then there's insider issues, right? I mean, just the morale of your staff and just the disruption of your work and business. So these high stakes, I think, have significant consequences. And if you're looking to make an investment in 2025 in one technology, I think protecting your crown jewels that are in SuccessFactors would be a critical step. So I come at this problem from a standpoint of not just stating the problem, but also using it as a driver to create a business case within an organization that has invested on top of the line human capital management solution to protect that solution against all of these high stake risks, which can lead to significant impact on the business. I did want to go back to just one more point on the previous slide also is just, the challenges. One thing, Dan, that you and I worked with closely along with Matt is, SuccessFactors is not a application for a mom and pop shop, right? It's not a QuickBook customer. It's typically, as Dan was saying, I think earlier, it's really about improving your overall business enterprise performance, where you may have many other applications that coexist. For example, I think, Dan, you mentioned Oracle or SAP. Obviously, it's owned by SAP, as Matt said earlier. So what we're finding is when you integrate all these systems together to get the full value, there's also the need to organize your structure, that configurable structure, in a way that you can control risk and segment that by region. So if you're typical enterprise customers, you may be operating in multiple regions in the world, EMEA, North America, South America, Asia Pacific, etc. Right, so in these regions, the way you set up your employee hierarchy and configure that and how that employee then interacts with your other sensitive applications, mission critical applications, that becomes really important. So having safe, not only just protect SuccessFactor data, but another risk that I feel like we believe is high stake is how does this data interact with the rest of your crown jewels of your enterprise? So the last point about internal operational disruptions, if SuccessFactor is disrupted, in other words, your data is not accurate or it's been compromised, it's going to impact not only how your employees get paid and how their benefits and performance is measured, but it's going to impact your ability to pay suppliers and satisfy customers in your CRM systems, in your procurement systems. So it's a fundamental system, and therefore the high stake risk from a technology perspective that we're trying to help our customers mitigate is that last point, internal operation that can get disrupted. So those are my kind of two takeaways from this slide is, number one, that this is a risk that is across the enterprise. It's not just in the system that holds your HR data. And second is that it can also, impact other applications like those ERP systems.
Yeah, and I think that's a good segue. Can we go to the next slide? Because we've talked a lot about kind of the risks and challenges, and let's talk about kind of the root cause impact or what causes those risks and challenges. And I'll kind of summarize this because I want to get into the actual benefit of how companies can take advantage of the SafePass platform as well as kind of the help to implement that. So in terms of some of the root causes, right, role creep, we touched on it a number of times without necessarily calling it role creep, but really role creep is where, as Dan alluded to earlier, where somebody has access in a prior role, they transition to another role, they're assigned another 2 or 3 roles to accomplish that. So that's one form of role creep. The other form of role creep is that additional access is granted to a user through their existing role, and as a result, their job changes, but necessarily doesn't mean a new role is assigned. So it's just important in either of those cases to really make sure, one, you're performing a frequent user access review and really make sure the roles are assigned to the appropriate users and removing roles that are no longer relevant. And then two, really making sure that at least on an annual basis, you're going through and certifying the access within your security roles to make sure that your roles are really meeting the needs of the business. And where changes are needed, going through the standard change management process to add or remove access to that specific role. The other area where we see a lot of common pitfalls is really around ownership. We touched on this earlier around governance. So as part of the governance process, you need to make sure that you have role owners defined. And a role owner, again, is somebody that is ultimately accountable for what's in that role and for who is assigned to that role. The role approver is the person that makes sure that the appropriate access is granted to the right person that's contained within that role. So an owner and approver can be one and the same. They can also be different depending on the structure of your organization. One thing to really stay keenly focused on is the pervasive use of shared accounts to really make sure that accounts are not shared, especially accounts with elevated access. And if they are needed, to really take advantage of a privileged access management solution or PAM solution to really make sure that we have the ability to check in, check out those various shared accounts, but more importantly, to make sure that you're able to audit the transactions that were performed while that account was in use. And then as Dan and Adil both touched on earlier, it's really making sure that there's a consistent process, not only for onboarding, but in some ways, more importantly, for offboarding and removing access to critical systems like SuccessFactors from employees that are transitioning out of the organization. So I just want to hit on those quickly, but Adil, Dan, anything else you guys want to add on this?
I'd say from my side, I think it's important also to make sure that organizations have a review process, and that can be as infrequently as annually, but can be quarterly. Is we usually see it somewhere on quarterly, where access is reviewed to make sure we've got the right people in the right roles. Go along the way. So you talked about onboarding, offboarding, Matt, but I think there's a component too of reviewing those users who are moving from job to job and kind of keeping that access for 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks becomes quite a bit longer as no one reviews that access. But definitely having a new process that makes it happen and really does the right work and makes sure as part of that review access is actually being removed. I just say that, and manual intervention. Manual intervention is really something that really gets organizations in a lot of trouble quite a bit. So automate. So those are my 2 key points. Adil, anything to add?
No, I think you guys come from the controls perspective, so I think you've covered it. What the objectives of doing access reviews and really how to manage access in SuccessFactors specifically, but some of those principles across all applications, that you just mentioned, all critical applications for sure. One thing that I would just add is where SafePass can add value is just automation of all these access management controls. And specifically, I just wanted to add that when we typically approach a SuccessFactors customer, what we find is there's a lot of manual intervention going on. Many times, SuccessFactors is not part of the IAM framework. There are discussions within IT and business about, what is our source of truth on employee identities. And I'm seeing a debate right now among our customers, because your SuccessFactors can be a source of truth for your employees, your employee manager hierarchy, for example, that helps you in your audits and your controls management. But it also has, it can complement your IDM systems. Let's say you're using Okta or Azure, or one of those new ones, or even an old ADFS. The question that we often get is, how do we best use this information and complement with what's in our IDM system to really streamline the provisioning, deprovisioning, and certification process that Matt, both you and Dan just sort of pointed out as key pitfalls that have to be addressed through access management solutions. So I think where we can help improve that process and streamline that is through automation of all of these steps, making it more self-service. So if you're onboarding, whether it's a few users, identities a week, or you're doing a massive upload because you're going live with a new SuccessFactors implementation, that's where we can step in as the technology folks in this discussion and help you streamline and make sure that while we're streamlining the process and automating it, that all your controls are still considered. So the point that Matt made at the beginning of this slide around role creep, that's a very common problem when you're onboarding SuccessFactors onto SafePass. First thing we do is run analysis and find that in many cases, the professional services folks that have implemented SuccessFactors have not had the opportunity to look at role creep at a fine-grained level. Many times, I've seen this in my 25 years of doing this work. When push comes to shove, people would just rename the role from a high-level management role to an inquiry role, but they don't go down to the permission level, and that creates a significant surprise during user acceptance testing, or in some cases, your post-implementation audits, which are not fun. And so to avoid all that, I think the only thing I would like to add is that, think of streamlining and automating the process of doing certifications, doing onboarding, offboarding, etc. And be glad to share our best practices on a future conversation about how to do that and how our customers are leveraging SafePass to streamline those steps specifically for SuccessFactors.
Yeah, so Dill, I think you covered a good amount of this slide around access, governance, and benefits. So I think it's awesome. Is there anything else that, Dan, you want to add to this before we move on to an actual case study in terms of how, to Dill's point, really SafePass comes to light and really helps secure SuccessFactors?
I think we've touched on all the critical points. I think let's jump into the next slide with the case study, and we can talk about some things there.
Great.
Yeah. Let me jump in and just kind of talk about a customer that uses SafePass to protect multiple environments. That's our typical customer profile. So they have an ERP system, they have a provisioning system, they have a treasury system, and SuccessFactors is a new addition to this mix as part of their overall digital transformation. Company operates in over 100 countries. They use ServiceNow for their IT ticketing and service management. They use SailPoint for their overall provisioning process. And they also have Azure, Microsoft Azure. Some of the key challenges that were reported to us as part of our needs assessment is the lack of visibility into the identities across the enterprise, but specifically as they were onboarding SuccessFactors. You know, it had some challenges on being able to see who has what access. One of the things where Dan really stepped up and helped us was really helping them define some of the common controls. So we worked with their advisors and their auditors to help identify common risks, and I'll let Dan talk more about these challenges around the controls that they had. I'll talk more about the technology and integration side. So from an integration perspective, they wanted to have the identity information hooked up through SafePass into SuccessFactors through standard APIs that SuccessFactors provides. And as we talked at the beginning of the session, there were some challenges in using that because SuccessFactors now is part of the SAP platform, so you have to rely on specific APIs that govern that. So the client had to get all that provisioned so that SafePass could leverage the technology we have, which is called Data Probe. So I won't go into too much detail. You can Google all that information on our website. But basically, we needed to be able to bring in the data around the user provisioning information as well as user assignments into SafePass. And we were able to do that using our Data Probe technology, which we have recently extended to what we call Data Pass. It's a transformation capabilities that streamlines that process as well. So in the old days, you would need to build a custom API in SuccessFactors to connect with SafePass or any other system. With our modern approach, we can figure out, how the data is laid out, and then we can map that into SafePass using data transformation that's built in. And we continue to grow that as AI agentics is becoming more acceptable to our customers. So being able to take that and map that very quickly so we can do the same thing for many other applications. So that was kind of from a technology perspective, some of the challenges were. There were other challenges from a business perspective I'll let Dan and Matt talk about. But it was a pretty complex environment, and the timing, as always, customers want things ready when they go live. In this case, we had to have everything ready for the SIT testing, system integration testing. So I'll just kind of finish off the technology portion and then have Dan, you and Matt come in and fill in the color that for us. But basically, we were able to deploy SafePass through various, software development life cycles from dev, test, all the way UAT and prod within about 3 to 4 months for this large global enterprise client. And the key to success was being able to easily map the security model from SuccessFactor into SafePass and provide, leverage our automated workflows that can help with the user access reviews immediately. So the client had the confidence when they went live that the right people had the right level of access, they weren't overprivileged, and they would avoid post-implementation audit findings. So we had some advanced analytics that were very helpful in that process from a solution perspective. So not only were we able to do a good job of removing overprivileged access through ticketing integration we had with ServiceNow, so we're able to generate tickets after the UAR reviews where the managers, or we call them role owners, were able to remove that access. But we were also able to ensure that ticket was generated automatically from SafePass into ServiceNow, and then when the tickets were completed, we enabled the auditors to come in and do independence verification using advanced analytics, where they could see the actions that were captured in SafePass from UAR process against the actual ITSM, in this case ServiceNow data, to ensure that a ticket was processed there. And then the third level of confirmation within SuccessFactor to ensure that user access to an overprivileged area was terminated. So what that does is, in terms of value, so those are great, features. But what is the value? The value is that we're able to reduce the exposure time, the risk exposure time, from typically doing it manually with spreadsheets or some other system, could be weeks and sometimes even months, which is not acceptable to the management or auditors, given the sensitive nature of this data. We're able to literally cover that within a week or two, all that activity across a global network. So that's where the efficiencies are in this automation, the automated solution that SafePass was able to provide. And ultimately, customer now has a single source of truth for their auditors, for their internal enterprise risk folks that look after data and compliance. And their controls are, most importantly, always effective, because this process not only just runs on a periodic basis, but we also have the ability to do continuous monitoring. And so your entire data is in an independent platform, which is SafePass, and it's secure and it's efficient in terms of the process automation that I just described. And that's the big benefit, or the results that we have identified as the business case on why this kind of a solution will generate a significant ROI. In this case, it was over $1 million in ROI within the first year. So those are some of my kind of highlights on this case study. I'd love to hear more from a business perspective from Dan and Matt on how you perceive the challenges and solutions and results.
I think one of the big challenges, and really the solution and the results was based on visibility. We started with almost a very significant lack of visibility on when we prior to the implementation, where folks just didn't have a sense of what the users had. And so in a lot of cases, folks said, I have no way of seeing this. And as we got further along in the project and ultimately the end, I think the team really dug in and appreciated the visibility that they wanted for so long, and actually now had. Now the interesting thing about that was, you know, the audit team really dove, really grabbed onto that too, and what we needed to help both the business and the audit team come together and say, okay, we now have this visibility. You know, when the control can be performed, you know, very frequently, but what makes most sense for the business. So tying it back into, okay, we have this visibility. How often are we going to, you know, use it from an audit perspective, and not really, you know, with one tool, put yourself into a box by saying you're now going to look at the whole gamut too often. So you're spending your time doing too many of those things. So it was almost, in some sense, it was over visibility from what the audit teams wanted, but we were eventually able to overcome that and talk them through what's reasonable and how to best use this. But I think that was one of the biggest benefits really for the team, is just finally get the visibility they wanted. And for senior leadership, it removed an excuse. Right. I don't have access to do this. I don't have visibility. It removed that, and senior management was finally able to say, you do have the visibility. You've been asking for this. Here it is. Go do it, you know, in a self-service manner, and you know, let's partner on this to make sure this what was once a significant problem is now now a very, very straightforward process. So I think that really, if I had to pick one big piece of the project here, it would just to talk about it would be the visibility.
Now, I would just summarize, right? Really, as we think about the way we talk about the 3 R's: revenue, risk, and ROI. I think the ultimate outcome of this was really the risk reduction and identification and monitoring, right? That was able to be achieved through the use of the SafePass and SuccessFactors platform. And then secondly, it was, as Adil touched on, the ROI, right? And really having the solution and the investment in the solution and the integration really kind of pay for itself and then some, really, in year one. So I think those are two, you know, broader kind of business benefits that have come out of this, in addition to the visibility to the actual access, the roles, the users, and all the role assignments. So, yeah.
Okay, that's great input, guys, and insight from you. Just to kind of wrap things up, I know we're coming to an end and we're almost out of time. One of the things that I want to leave the folks with here is, you know, today's focus is on SuccessFactor and how we can govern access within SuccessFactor. But this is this goes beyond, right? So a typical customer of ours has I don't know, 20 or 30 critical applications. I'm not talking about, we did it recently, Matt and Dan, we had a talk about SaaS sprawl. So if you include all the SaaS applications, not to mention all the legacy applications, we're seeing an enterprise customer with as many as 100 plus applications, and it goes up from there. You know, some have 300 to 500. But I think of those applications, the ones that really hold your crown jewels, you know, are in the range of, you know, at least 10 to 15, maybe 20 applications that have sensitive data. And SuccessFactors is one of the critical applications. And so whatever we have talked about today, you know, please make sure that you understand that this can also apply to other applications that contain sensitive data. And so protecting the information in these systems requires you to have good controls on how you provision access, timely deprovision access, you know, as Matt and Dan said, privilege level, you know, in the roles, you know, the problem with roles management, you know, all of those are critical controls to ensure that you get the full ROI from the investment you made in SuccessFactor and other applications, while maintaining that visibility and operational efficiencies within your IT environment, as well as meet your compliance requirements, right? So that's in a nutshell what this client gave us as feedback in terms of how this creates value. I really appreciate Matt and Dan, your time today. Angie, I think we can wrap it up. If you have any questions or last minute comments.
Yes, that does wrap up our webinar today for managing access in SAP SuccessFactors. We hope that you guys found this session very insightful and that you're walking away with some practical strategies to manage that access. So with that said, we'd like to thank you for joining us and offer any opportunity for any questions if you have them now. I didn't see any in the system, so. Okay, then I suppose we will wrap. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everyone.